So welcome to this lockdown monologues webinar. So today I'm going to be talking through how to approach the performance of a monologue. So we're going to be looking at character development and delivery and practical hints and tips for self-taping and performance on film. So like Nick said, I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes and we're going to look at 4 sections. So we're going to look at choosing a monologue, character development, performance, and then modes of performance. So the difference between kind of performing for theatre, performing for screen, and self-taping. And then we're going to do a little Q&A to finish. But to start, I just thought I'd introduce myself and tell you a bit about me. So I am born and raised in Nottingham and Mansfield, and really proud of it. I think Nottingham is the most amazing creative place, full of brilliant people. And I'm very proud to be from there. And for me, it all started when my mum took me to Nottingham Playhouse to see a production of Cinderella when I was about 6 years old, and I just thought it was so magical. And that was when I said I want to be an actor. And then I did junior youth theatre at College Street, and then went on to Nottingham Youth Theatre, the older group, and then went to the Oxford School of Drama on a scholarship, and then I started my career. So I've had a really diverse career so far. So I did King Lear and Husbands and Sons at the National, and then for screen I've done Coronation Street and Casualty and Torval and Dean, amongst other creative projects. And I'm also a voiceover artist, so I do voices for animations and things. So when I was talking to Nick about lockdown monologues and what we could do for the young people of Nottingham, I suggested a workshop on approaching a monologue, because I think sometimes you're sat with all these words in front of you, and sometimes it's quite difficult to go, how on earth do I take these words and bring them to life and put them in a character? And through my work, I've worked with lots of different directors and actors, and at drama school I have been given lots of different tools in approaching a monologue. And I want to make a disclaimer at the beginning of this session, in that there is no right or wrong way to approach this. I mean, acting is art and everyone has their own opinion on it. So today I'm just going to throw lots of different exercises, methods, and ways to approach a monologue at you. And these are different tools that I use for different projects, but I would just encourage you to try them all out, see what works for you, and what might work now might not work in a few years' time. I just wanted to give you a toolbox really to work from. So let's dive in. So firstly, choosing a monologue. So you might be working on a monologue for your schoolwork, your college work, in which case they've probably been assigned to you, you've probably been given your character. But I know for drama school auditions, so those of you particularly looking at applying to drama school, they often ask for 2 to 3 contrasting monologues, and they've normally got a time limit on them. They normally say between 1.5 and 2 minutes. They normally ask for a classical, a contemporary, and a song. And I remember getting being overwhelmed by the amount of information that was on all these drama school websites. And so for me, what really helped is I got a notebook, and I put each school on each page, and I put on the application process. So how many rounds they had, what I needed to prepare, what monologues that I needed to give, the deadlines, and then ways to finance and fund. And choosing a monologue, I would just say choose a piece that means something to you. So that could be by your favourite writer, or from your favourite play, or it could be about the place that you're from, or an environment that you recognise. It could be a piece or a character that really reflects your hopes or your fears or your struggles or your passion. Basically, just pick a character that you're drawn to. You don't necessarily have to explain it, but there'll be something in there that draws you to that character, that draws you to that piece. And I would just say, do you in this, make your own mind up, because I remember sitting before the drama school auditions with all of these pieces of paper spread out in the living room, and lots of different advice. And at the end of the day, you're the actor, you're the person that's going to bring this character to life, and you are so unique. There is nobody else like you. You know, you're a mix of your DNA, where you're from, what you've experienced in life, and that's your power, that's your magic, that's what you bring to a character. And it's your body, it's your face, it's your voice. These are your instruments to create a character. So, and that's why, you know, audiences go to see Andrew Scott play Hamlet, because they want to see Andrew Scott's take on that. So when you're picking your monologue, I just want you to think, why do I want to do this, and what can I bring to it? And so that's your truth, your emotions, and your experiences. I want you to bring those to the table, because those are your ingredients that you're going to use to create a character that's authentic, that's complex, and that ultimately people are going to believe in. So that's choosing a monologue. Now we're going to look at character development. So obviously you've got your monologue and it's from a theatrical play. So I would say first, read the play as a story, just with no kind of boundaries, no pressure. Just read it and enjoy it, and just enjoy that story from start to finish. Then on your second time reading it, I would say read it from your character's point of view. Now, this is an amazing exercise that Marianne Elliott, the director, uses. When I worked with her on Husbands and Sons, she used to get up every morning and before rehearsals read the play again, even though she'd probably read it, you know, 200 times before. And she always read it from a different character's point of view, especially if she knew that she was going to rehearse that character scene in rehearsals that day. And it just means that you're really getting into the headspace of that character, and you're seeing this play and these events through their eyes. So when you read the play for the second time from this character's point of view, I'd encourage you to get a blank piece of paper and to plot the character's journey a little bit like a graph. So you get a blank piece of paper and put a little X, and you put their entrance, and then you might put scene 12 if that's the next time they come in, scene 14 or act 2. And at each of these points, this exercise, you add in the stage directions, you add in little details that the play gives you. So maybe the time of day it is, what the weather's like, or where the characters come from. And at the same time, on a separate bit of this paper, you can also write the facts and the questions that you might have. So facts would be listed in the stage directions. So in Husbands and Sons, Maggie's first entrance is that she comes in and she's got wet hair and she's worried about her hair. It's evening and it's obviously been raining. So on my graph, I'd put Maggie's entrance, I'd put the time of day, evening, I'd put she's come from her farm, and I'd say it's raining. But I also might have a question at that point. I might think, does she like rain? What's her favourite weather? And these are just you letting your imagination kind of fill in the dots around this character's entrance or around their first appearance. So write down the facts, write down the questions. And then for these different points in the play, I like to do the exercise where I ask who, what, when, and why. So who are they? So what clues does the play give me about who this person is, and who are they talking to? What are their key relationships? That's who. What do they want? So in Maggie's first entrance, she wants to charm Ernest's mum, and she wants to see Ernest. So I can put answer what. When is the play set? What time of day it is? All of those details. Why? This really answers the question, what drives the character? So why has Maggie walked 2 miles down the road on a wet night to come to this door? So who, what, when, and why. So you can ask these questions for the different scenes that this character appears in, or you can just ask them more broadly so you get a picture of the play as a whole. And really the key questions here are what they want and what matters to them. And this is if you want to get deeper into this, you can look up Stanislavski, you can look up Lee Strasberg, Uta Hagen, Katie Mitchell, Max Stafford Clark. These are all practitioners and directors and writers that really deal in that what, and they would call the what a character's objective. So that might be what they ultimately want in life. So I might take Maggie as a character and say she wants to be happy. That might be her big super objective. In that scene, her mini objective might be that she wants to forge a good relationship with Ernest's mum. But don't worry if these questions are big or you're getting lost in that. These are just, like I say, these are just little tools that might help you along the way. So that's like the big context of the play, and you've probably answered, you've got lots of questions, you've got lots of facts. Then you come to look at the monologue. So I want you to look at where it comes in the play. So, and look at those questions that you've written down. So the who, the what, the when, and the why. Apply those to this moment that this monologue takes place in. And I like to think of it as a little snapshot, or if you like an Instagram video of this person, this character at this moment in time. So when you've got your monologue, you've thought about the play, sit down and think, what do they want and what's driving them? So that's your big work, and now we're going into the detailed work. So, and everybody works in different ways. You know, lots of people like music as a way into characters. Lots of people like words. Some people prefer movement. So in these detailed exercises that I'm going to give you now, you might think, oh, that really clicks with me. I like to listen to music. I'm going to find that helpful as a way in. Or I might be talking about words and punctuation. You might think, that's not for me. But I would encourage you to keep an open mind and just have these as little tools that you can dip in and out of. So one exercise is really looking at the words. So looking at the punctuation of a piece. So I like to think of the punctuation as, you know, full stop, commas. These are little clues that the playwright is giving you as an actor. And if I take the piece that I did for the YCA Lockdown Monologues launch video, the Northern Not Northern piece by James Graham, I started and I basically had the monologue on the page, and I basically just put a dash every time I came to a full stop. And that for me is a great first way into a monologue, into a speech, because it really gives me the character's thoughts. So I normally mark these thoughts in the piece, and then I'll normally walk around. I'll walk around the living room, or I'll walk around the house, and I'll read it out loud to myself. So I'd say, you know, that bit at the airport, and I've come to a question mark. So that's full stop, that's a piece of punctuation. I then change direction and start the next line when you've flown back home and you've got off the plane and there's a sign that says, and that for me puts the punctuation in my body. So what I've done is I've taken it from the page and put it in my body. So I do that with full stops. Then I move on to questions. So every time I see a question, I circle it. And I like to use different coloured pens in this. But you might like to use the same colour, or you might like to go wild. And I normally circle the questions, and I look at what question they're asking. So I think, are they asking it a rhetorical question? Are they asking the question to themselves, or are they asking the question to another character? So once I've circled those questions, I then get up, I do the same exercise, but every time I come to a question, I walk and then I jump every time I come to a question mark. And this might seem bonkers, and if you're sharing a house with anybody, they might think, what on earth is she doing? But don't worry about that. Just this is designed to get these thoughts and get these questions into your body. So every time I come to a question, I do a little jump. And then I look at the paragraphs that the playwright has set out. So in this, there's clear breaks and clear sections. And these are chunks of thought. So I like to give them names or numbers. So I might say, okay, we've got like 10 chunks of thought here. And I like to name them according to the thoughts. So I might say airport. That was my first one in the James Graham monologue. And cob was another section. And what this does, it really helps me navigate my way through what the character's thinking. So they think airport and then they think sign. And it just means that you're kind of getting inside that character's head and you know where the thoughts are leading. And another step to this sectioning is to give the section an action. So when you thought about that big question of what the character wanted, they often, characters, or we all in life, use verbs to get what we want. So if I want to borrow £10 off my mum, I'll probably charm her, I might try to amuse her, I might try to make her laugh. And these are all little tactics that I play to achieve that goal, that objective. So on my sections in the script, I would write down a verb that I would just keep in my mind as what I think the character wants to play in this bit. And this is again just an exercise. You don't have to stick to this in performance, but characters often use a whole range of actions, and it's actually really creative as an actor to think about what sort of actions they might use, and sometimes it surprises you. So sometimes I've been looking at a monologue and I've thought, oh, what if I manipulate in this bit? What if I charm to then discipline, and look at those shifts in those actions? So I mark out the sections and I give them an action. And then to put this into my body, I then would read the monologue, and every time I came to a different section, I would find a different position. So I might read the first section walking around, and then for the second section, I might just sit down. And that to me helps me know the difference between different sections, and just plot them as I'm going through. And then another exercise I like to do is to underline the verbs, so the doing words in the monologue. So in the James Graham piece, I've underlined, that bit at the airport when you've flown back home. So I just underline those. And that to me is because these verbs are the doing words. They carry this character's wants. And so I like to read it aloud like I've just done there, and I like to use volume. So I might sometimes like shout the word that's the verb, or I might just stress it. And all of these things basically just takes out the intimidating nature of a block of text on a page. They're all just little ways in. And so those are all techniques that are quite word heavy. But another thing that I like to do is dance it. Now, bear with me. So I think sometimes you get a feeling for how a character moves. You might think, oh, this is quite a floaty character, or this is quite a heavy character. So when I first come to look at a monologue, I sometimes like to just give myself some space and dance it. So I read it out and I just explore different movement, like what it feels like in my body. And that's particularly good. I've got friends that just don't like the word aspect of, the daunting nature of words on a page. They find it much easier to put it into their body, and that draws on like the work of Rudolf Laban and Jacques Lecoq, if you want to look up some of these people. And so that dancing it kind of just puts it in your body. You might like to sing it if you have a particular affinity with singing, and actually singing it also helps the words go in. Have you ever wondered why you recognise and seem to learn songs off the radio? It's because the way that it's structured in song kind of works a different part of your brain. So sometimes it might help you just to sing the monologue. And another thing that really helps me is to write it out. So I'll take the monologue, if it's typed out or if it's in a play, and I'll take a blank piece of paper and I'll just write it out. And what that does for me is it really makes me look at the words the playwright's chosen and just think about them. And I might think, oh, that's interesting that they used that word over a different one, or oh, I wonder and why that character's using those words, or has chosen to reveal this piece of information in a certain way. So those are all exercises to look at the words of a monologue. Then you might like to look at the voice, so the voice of a character. So with all those questions and facts that you wrote down on your piece of paper when you were reading the play, you will probably have an idea about how this character speaks, or you can just be creative. And that's the beauty with a monologue and with you who is unique performing it, because you can make creative decisions. You can take a playwright's words and you can put it into you. Like I said, do you. So you might like to think about the character's voice. So whether they're high pitched or low pitched, you know, where might their voice sit in your vocal register? So do they have a higher pitched voice to you? Do they have a lower pitched voice to you? You might like to think about their accent. Is their accent stated at the start of the play? Is the play set in a specific space? In which case there'll be a specific accent attached to that. And that's a decision you have to make, whether you go with that or whether you play against it. I was talking to Nick when we were organising these webinars about how amazing Shakespeare sounds in a Nottingham accent. It's something about the sounds and the and the ups, not the ups in Shakespeare, but it's those kind of really guttural noises that I think make Shakespeare amazing in a Nottingham accent. And that's why I chose the James Graham piece for the Lockdown Monologues launch video, because it's written in a Nottingham accent. It's really rich, and I think doing that accent really brings it to life and brings the playwright's intention out. So think about the accent. And then on voice, also think about the speed at which a character speaks. Do they speak quickly? Do they speak slowly? Do they slur their words? Have they got a unique way of speaking? And there might be clues in the play to this. Other characters might talk about it, or it might just be a choice that you have to make. And you might rehearse the monologue, and halfway through you might think, oh, what happens if I change up the speed at which this character is speaking? How does that affect it? So that is the voice. Then I often think about the body. So if I were to think about the character's face, is this somebody that wears makeup? Or and what's the shape of their face? Obviously, it's going to be your face performing it. But if you were to make a mask of this character's face, what would it be? You know, have they got quite a, if they're quite a judgmental character, if that's a character trait of them, then you might think about whether they've got a furrowed brow and quite piercing eyes, or if they're a generally quite happy, aspirational character, they might have quite a wide-eyed face. So think about almost the mask of this character's face. And I would encourage you to read the monologue with that mask on almost. So using your own face and manipulating it into different positions and seeing what that does. Like if you scrumple up your nose and read out the monologue, you might actually end up with a higher pitched voice, and that might feel right for that monologue, for that character, or it might feel completely wrong. All of this is about trying out these tools and seeing what works or what feels right. So shape of your face, and then into your body. So you might like to think about how this character walks. Think about their tempo. Are they a fast walker, a slow walker? Where is their weight? Are they heavy? And I don't mean body shape in this sense, but do they often sink down, or are they quite a light person? Do they almost float when they walk? Where is their center in their body? If when they walk, do they walk from their chest, or is their center kind of further down, further back? And think about their gaze. So is this the sort of person when they walk that they're looking up at the sky, or is this the sort of person that looks down at the ground? And sometimes these decisions, you'll make them out of gut instinct, but then you'll realize that they actually link back to the facts and questions that you answered or wrote down when you first come to look at the monologue or this character in a play. Because often, if you get the feeling that this is a character that walks with their eyes up, then often they relate to a hopeful character, or if you feel like it's a character that's quite heavy, that's quite stuck, that might unlock something as to what this character feels about their life and about their circumstances. So all the time when you're doing these exercises, I'd say go with your gut, try out different things, and keep going back to those initial thoughts and questions that you had, but equally let yourself go. Take your imagination to a different place. Try out the walk, see how it feels. Maybe you then go a next step and think, oh, actually, if the character walks like this, then maybe they talk like this. What does that do? And I just encourage you to get up and walk it, dance it. Just try it as many ways as you can, because that's, I think, when you really make the most creative decisions and make the decisions that feel right to you. And finally, looking at character development, think about the world that this character exists in. So what clothes might they wear? If it's a modern production, if it's set in modern times, what clothes do they live in? You know, do they live in jeans and t-shirt, or are they more of a dress and boots kind of girl? And how does that affect how they sit or how they move or how they stand? So if it's a character that likes sloppy jumpers, then that might unlock something as to how they sit. Or if it's a character that wears a shirt and tie, then how does that affect their breath, their voice, how they stand, how they move? And another tool I like to use when I'm thinking about the world of a character is what songs and music a character listens to. And this, I always create a different character playlist for every character I play. It's really helpful to me before I go on stage, or before if I'm on set. Actually, sometimes I'm on set, I can listen to music before they call action. And for me, that just it gets me into the headspace of a character, and it can be anything, you know, classical, rap, hip hop. I just like to create a playlist, and that to me gets me into a character in a different way. But above all, in all of these exercises, make it enjoyable for yourself. You know, this is fun, this is creative, this is where you get to bring all of these things that make you tick, and all of your ideas to the table. This is where it gets built. So with all of those exercises, you're building who this character is, and you're really focusing on what they want. And another tool that might help you in this is that I encourage you to people watch wherever you are. You know, I love sitting on a bus and just looking at the people around me, or sitting in a cafe and watching people walk by. And it's amazing because you realise how unique everyone is, and you look at how they walk and you think, wow, like that person's really like down in their knees, or it's amazing to actually look at what makes up all of the people around you. And that's where I get a lot of my ideas from. So I would encourage you to people watch as much as you can. So those are all those tools and exercises. I've thrown a lot at you there. Please ask any questions about those at the end. But those tools for me are how I build a character. Then we move on to the performance. So you've done all the hard work. You've used these exercises. You've created your character. I would encourage you to leave that at the door, leave that in the wings, or leave that in your dressing room when you're about to go on set, because you don't need to show how much work you've done. You don't need to come in and demonstrate, you know, all of those exercises. They're there to guide you, and the performance is where you really are allowed to fly, and you have to trust that works there, that all of those exercises you did will in some way come out in your performance. And with the performance, I would just encourage you to think about speaking the truth. You are that character at that point in time, and you are speaking for a reason. You've worked out what that character wants. Speak it. And think of it as sharing a part of yourself through the words. And some practical exercises before you go on stage or before you perform to camera. I just encourage you to take some deep breaths, to squeeze everything really tight and then just let it go, because that really helps you release any tension you have. And during your delivery of the monologue, hopefully you'll be in the words, you'll be thinking through those segments of thought. But if at any point you feel a bit lost or you don't really know where you're going, I'd encourage you to just focus on being truthful, focus on why you're speaking, and go back to that question of what you want, what's driving you. And really just take the pressure off yourself, because playing a character allows you to do anything, and it will be different every time you perform it. That's what's magical about theatre and about a performance on camera. It will be alive, and it will be alert, and it will be inflected by all of those exercises that you've done. So just take the pressure off, speak the truth. And then afterwards, just take a moment. I think at the end of a performance, I think it's natural to want to rush off stage or want to go, all right, I'm done now, turn the camera off. And actually, it's really important to have a proper ending. And that's why actors bow at the end of a theatre performance. It's taking that moment to just breathe and to let that character have its moment, have its moment in time. And at the end, be proud. Doing a monologue or performing on stage is a really unnatural thing to do, and be proud of yourself and be proud of the work that you've put in. And then in terms of performance level, obviously theatre, screen work and self-tapes all have different technicalities. So in theatre, you have to project your voice. There's stagecraft involved in terms of rules about just being visible to the whole theatre. And often in a tech rehearsal in theatre, that's when I really like to explore the stage and look at what works and what doesn't. But obviously on screen, your audience is there, it's where the camera is. So obviously you're going to have different levels of performance, but I would say at the heart, all of that character work is the same work that I do for both theatre and screen performances. It's all building a character, it's working out the complex thoughts, and it's working out that character's truth. And in terms of our lockdown monologues project, I know that we're going to ask you to self-tape, which basically all that means is recording yourself at home, either on a laptop or a phone. And so for just a few little points to help you with that is use the equipment you've got. You don't need to go out and buy any fancy cameras. Your smartphone or your phone will be great. And you can either deliver it straight down the lens as if that was the other person you were talking to, or you can deliver it slightly off camera. I did my James Graham piece to the lens, down the lens, because I just felt that was right for that piece. But you might think that your monologue, you might want to put somebody slightly off camera. In terms of sound, try to avoid anywhere that's noisy. If you can, kind of close the doors, close the windows of the room that you're in. And just be aware of the sound around you. But if your monologue is set outdoors, you might want to be creative. You might want to take it outside and use the noise, the traffic, or that's really up to you, and that's a creative decision. In terms of lighting, you can just use normal lamps that you've got around your house to enhance the lighting. So normally on set you'll have a key light, which normally is the main light that kind of lights your face. You'll have a fill light from the side, and then you'll have a backlight. But really, we're asking you to record this in lockdown. Just use what you've got, be creative, and just make sure that we can see you, basically. And we just want to see your raw performance. And I think that's what's beautiful about a monologue. It is a character's thoughts, it's a character's truth, and actually the more raw and vulnerable you can make it, actually the more powerful it often is. So that is all the tools. I know that I've thrown a lot at you there. If you have any questions, please throw them at me about these exercises or about acting in general.
I've got a question from Alia. Hi Cassie, how do you prevent yourself from over preparing a scene? Sometimes I find that I over prep, which leads to my instinct becoming lost within the scene. Therefore, I'm not always present in the moment.
Oh, that's a great question. I think in terms of exercises you can do, I don't think you can over prepare in terms of the character development and the building, because actually the more you think about something, the more different avenues you can go down, and the more your imagination can run wild, and the more kind of rich and complex you can make a character. So in that sense, I would just encourage you to do as much prep as you can in terms of the world of the play and the character. But I think that question particularly relates to performance. And I know that if you're doing, you know, if you're on the 50th performance of like King Lear, let's say, I think that can often happen to actors where you know the lines so well, you know where people are going to move, you know, there's a lot that doesn't change. So for that, I would say give yourself little challenges. I often keep the same objective. So I say, okay, this character wants to manipulate this other character. But if I usually kind of charmed or threatened, or if I normally I try to change up the action that I use. So I often think, okay, tonight I'm going to try a different tactic to get what I want. And sometimes that's a brilliant way of keeping a scene fresh, because if you deliver a line in a different way, then the other actor, if you're in a scene, is going to give it back to you in a different way, and that's where you kind of recreate that energy and that freshness. And in terms of kind of being in your head and feeling like you're just on the same trajectory, I would say just go back to that question of speak the truth, and if you want to try something new, try it. You know, that audience is new. That audience is probably not going to be the same audience that saw it the night before, and anything new is exciting, and it will automatically give you something to play with. I would always think about, how can I play with this? I think play is a really good way of keeping it fresh, both for you and the other actors in the scene. Yeah. Well, I think everybody gets nervous. Like, if you ask any actor, they would all say that they get nervous. That's completely natural. I think it's how you use those nerves. So for me, I like to think of it as almost those nerves before you get on a roller coaster, that it is a bit scary, and it's unnatural to be strapped into this thing that's going to catapult you, like loop the loop and all that. But to enjoy it, and to think, okay, these nerves are there, they're not gonna go away, but to use them in a productive way. So kind of using that adrenaline to propel you into the scene, and to think, okay, I'm nervous, but how is that gonna, think about it as fuel. I think Judi Dench talked about using nerves as fuel, because nerves are something that's there that makes you realize that you're alive, and if you're alive on stage, that's the key. So let them be there. But in terms of, if you feel like nerves are inhibiting you or affecting your performance, I think sometimes they can come out, particularly in people's voices. I just encourage you, just before you go on stage, either to sit down and really feel the weight of yourself in a chair, or stand against a wall and close your eyes and just take 3 massive deep breaths. So in and out, and on every out breath, just think about you just letting go of all of those negative thoughts, all of those fears, and just breathing in life and excitement and what you're about to do, and thinking about the story that you're about to tell, because it's not about you, it's about the character, and it's about you playing this other person. So and that often really frees me, because I think I often find it very difficult to stand on stage as myself, but if I'm standing on stage as a character, you know, that's a completely different thing. It's almost it's a safety blanket. So think about why you're telling that character story.
Do you have any tips of ways to learn lines? Quite often the text can get paraphrased.
Yeah, so I really like recording lines, so I'll often do that on my phone, just on a voice memo, and I'll often record it a couple of ways. So normally I record it kind of, if I've decided what the character's accent is or voice is, I record it that way, and then I also record it as a whisper. And recording it those two different ways helps me not learn it in, you know, learn it as a piece of music in that sense, because that can be dangerous, and that can get you into a rut of saying the lines in exactly the same way. But in recording it both of those ways, that kind of puts that variation there. And then I'll just listen to it as I'm going about the house, or doing the hoovering, or going out on a run, or going to the shops, and I almost try and distract myself. So I'll often try and do another activity while I'm listening to the lines, because it kind of activates a different part of your brain. So that's really helpful. I find writing the lines out really helpful, because that makes me realize why a playwright has used those specific words, and it helps me to get those words right, in that sense of, oh, that he used this word rather than that word. And also doing all of those exercises that I kind of threw at you. If you walk around, and you're looking for, you know, the full stop to then change direction, or the question to jump on, you're kind of distracting you're distracting yourself from this like body of text and the learning of the lines. But in moving around and in reciting the lines in different ways, you're actually putting it into memory. So those things for me really help, because I'm quite physical, and I'm quite oral in terms of learning. I find it really difficult to just sit there and read lines on a page over and over.
So, do you have any advice for staying calm on stage and trusting your memory of the scene? Often feel myself feeling panic before performing and losing my instinct within the scene. I don't want my nerves to come in the way of the work.
Well, I think the exercise, breathing beforehand, always remember to breathe. That's always, I remember one of our tutors at drama school said that, and actually it's amazing how sometimes you forget, especially when you're concentrating. And by that, obviously, you don't forget to breathe. But sometimes if you get nervous, then your breath moves up into your chest. And if you just sit there now, there's a big difference between if you just focus on breathing into your chest and then breathing into your belly. So if you put your two hands like on the bottom of your belly and just concentrate on moving those hands out, that's a deep breath. And that, if you let your breath drop in there, that is like, my voice tutor at drama school described it as your powerhouse, because in that sense, you're really breathing, you're using the full like instrument of yourself, and you're letting what another actor's giving you affect you. You're almost like breathing it in and then coming back with your own action. So I'd say breathing is really key. And those just the idea of kind of getting out of your own head, because I think it's so natural to have a moment where you kind of realize that you are, you know, you're an actor on stage in the middle of this story. And the more that you focus on that, the more you can psych yourself out of a scene, and the more you can lose yourself from the action. I just say, if that thought comes, let it be there, breathe, and then just focus on your scene partner. I think other actors are amazing to bounce off. You know, if you just look in another person's eyes and trust that the work you've done is there. I mean, it's a huge thing to say, because obviously you get nervous, but really trusting that you've got it, and you're not going to let those lines go. And if they do go, then think, what's the worst that can happen? You know, you will save yourself. You will go to a next point in the speech, or your scene partner will come in and save you. And actually, half the time, the audience will never know. I've been in so many professional productions where, you know, big bits of text gets missed out, and in your head you're going, oh my goodness, they've just skipped that, and we're now on page 53 and we were on page 51, and afterwards, you know, it can feel like the biggest thing in the world. And I've met friends after the show and they've gone, oh, that was amazing. And you kind of go, yeah, did you notice that bit? And they won't have a clue that anything happened. So I think taking the pressure off yourself for it to be perfect is a big thing, and just letting it be and letting it breathe. And if things go wrong or if things go differently, not being afraid of that and using it to fuel the scene.